Hey guys, what's up? Happy Monday, Fix Your Shitty Movement Monday. My name is Karis. We're going back to the squat today, and the issue that we're going to address is kind of a complicated one because there are so many different reasons for this shitty movement. The main movement I'm talking about, by the way, is the one that comes from your mouth when you say, I can't squat well because of mobility issues. Generally, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. That's a lie that you tell yourself, or worse, someone that you hired is telling you. In my experience, I have met very few people who actually can't squat well because of mobility. One of them was a girl who broke her feet when she was a kid. Her feet were jacked the fuck up. I mean, she couldn't squat anything for a long time. P.S. She went on to compete in powerlifting and squatted about 160 pounds at like 16 years old. It's fucking legit. And just a testament to what getting out of your head and stopping the stories you tell yourself can do for you. What a badass, right? Okay, so the main areas that people complain about when they talk about mobility are ankles, hips, and the one that I don't hear that much about, that is probably the actual thing that's limiting, the actual mobility issue that limits you, is your upper back. So really, anytime that people have that issue, it's there, and it's the last thing that people ever consider because nobody ever thinks about the squat as involving your upper back. If you squat really heavy, then you probably are a little acquainted with how you use your upper back in the squat. We're going to touch a lot more on the upper back next time. We're going to go over the difference between high bar and low bar, why it matters, and your upper back's role in the squat. Today, we are focusing on especially the hips and the ankles, which is actually more of an issue of just bad mechanics, as a lot of them are. So the main place where people feel restricted are their ankles. But it's true, most people have very limited ankle dorsiflexion. That's the ability for their weight to shift, or basically the flexibility of your Achilles, right? The backside of your heel and ankle. So the quickest fix for that, and the easiest for someone you're paying who doesn't give a shit about you, is to just elevate your heels. Because you can see, if I squat with my toes forward, right, the way that most people are instructed to squat in a narrow stance, I can't get very far. Now, if I elevate my heels and I do the same thing, toes forward, narrow stance, boom, suddenly I can hit a squat. Now, the main way that you can fix this is actually the first Fix Your Shitty movement ever, is just to adjust the position of your fucking feet. And that's something that most people never even try. I will say that a lot of the people I work with who attempt to squat that way were literally told by trainers to squat that way, people they paid. And lo and behold, their knees hurt, and their back hurt, and their hips were tight, and all the same shit that I hear over and over and over again. Which is just a reminder to, for the love of God, check the credentials of the person you're giving money to, because that stupid book that we have and the tests we take is hard, but it doesn't teach you how to squat. So unless someone has like a proven track record of teaching that or something like that, then you should probably find someone else. Because the place where you learn the squat are these workshops where you spend a lot of money and time working with a true expert in the field. That means like 20 to 30 years experience. And that's how you learn really how to do this shit well and how to teach it. That's the other really important part. Anyway, I can't say that enough because I'm tired of people getting hurt by squatting. It's not its fault, leave it alone. Okay, so by turning your toes out just a smidge, boop, and widening your stance, boop, generally, you'll be able to squat, right? Just opens up your hips. That's literally the first thing I do with people when I ask them to squat for me. That's the assessment that I use to look at pretty much everybody's movement period, because the squat tells me a lot about how they move. So the goblet squat with a kettlebell is the assessment tool that I use. I'm a Russian kettlebell instructor. Talk about badass ways to invest your money in education, trainers, coaches, all that shit. because the way they teach the squat is amazing. It works like a charm. But also, it's a lot easier for me to have you show me how you squat using a kettlebell than a barbell for a lot of different reasons. Mainly because the kettlebell is light and small. So even the big ones are small, right, compared to like a loaded barbell. So if someone struggles to get the bell into position, I mean, I'll always start with something light anyway, they're not gonna hurt themselves. They'll either not be able to get the bell into the correct position, or they won't be able to squat it, and they'll probably just set it right back down. So that makes it a lot easier for me to see what's happening, and also for them to not feel afraid, even though people are still afraid, which, I mean, it makes sense, but you know, there's nothing to be afraid of. Just make sure that your trainer isn't a jackass. Or better yet, get a coach. So you have my little friends here, the kettlebells. And you guys know I always bust these guys out, right? So the first mistake most people make when they're showing me their goblet squat is they hold the bell like this, which is an abomination, because I'm rounded forward in my shoulders, I'm all up in my traps, right? And I'm kind of like slouched forward. Remember how I was saying upper back is most people's issue in the squat? Yeah, this helps facilitate that, because when they squat, they do this, right? So first of all, don't fucking do that. See, I didn't even want to use like legitimate weight when I did that, because I don't want to hurt myself. So this is a 16 kilo or 35 pound bell. This is generally the one that I would suggest women work with. And to get it into position, I do what's called a two-handed clean, and I hold the kettlebell by the horns. And you'll see that when I'm in this position, it looks an awful lot like a fucking forearm plank, right? So a lot of people are like, well, it's too heavy, I can't hold it in my hands. It's like, yeah, because they're trying to hold it like this, right? Like a purse or something. I don't like doing that. But yeah, of course your hands, your grip strength isn't strong enough to hold on to that. That's why you have to use your lats. Go back to the deadlift video about the lats, where I talk about how it's not really your grip, it's your lats, right there. And I can show that to you using this 70 pound, 32 kilo kettlebell. I'm 160 pounds, I'm 5'5", I'm not a particularly big person. But if I bring this up into the goblet squat position, I can hold it and I can squat with it. Let's hope. Okay, so then my squat here. So, again, I was able to do that not because of like superhuman strength or grip strength that could snap a dick off. It's actually because I'm using my lats and I know how to do that. Heavier is better, because heavier is gonna force you to do it well. If you're using a little bell, like 10 pounds or something, yeah, you're probably gonna be able to just go right through it like no problem. But I couldn't talk when I was picking that up because I had to brace, right? And I had to brace when I was holding it here because it wanted to pull me this way. And my upper back and posterior chain is what was hanging onto it. Okay, so sets me up perfectly to go into why your squat sucks. And that's because of where you're initiating your squat from. You are either initiating by tilting your pelvis or dropping from the knees, okay? So tilting your pelvis means that when you initiate to go down into your squat, you do this. I know it looks good, I got sick moves, but that is not what you want to do. Can you imagine, right? Okay, so here's your neutral spine, right? You put a barbell on this shit. Gee, I wonder why your low back hurts. And also, when you do that, right, your hamstrings connect back here. So if you are pulling up on those hamstrings, gee, I wonder if they're gonna feel tight because they're getting pulled on, yeah? And also your psoas, the other thing that's chronically tight in people, connects up here, T13. If I do this, what does that do to it? It's gonna make it feel pretty tight, don't you think? Yeah. So the reason why you feel that limitation is because you're literally yanking on yourself and it feels tight. And when you do that, so you have the space, right? You close this space between your hip bone, right, your hip joint and your femur, and then you come down like this. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to get very far. And it's probably gonna hurt your knees because you're literally shifting all of your body weight right here, and you're closing off your hip socket. So this is where butt wink comes from too, if you're familiar with that. So I'm here, and then my femur literally has nowhere else to go. If you have the mobility, boop, your pelvis will literally rotate around your femur to kind of wink like that. And yeah, that's where that comes from. So a lot of chicks, especially who like dive bomb their squats and their backs hurt, that's why, because they have no stability in their pelvis. They're just boop, boop, right? It's me, I'm chicks. I can do that too. And so my squat looks good, but I plateau and I hurt my back, right? Pretty much every single time if I'm not careful about where I'm initiating my squat from, and in that case also making sure that your lower abdominals, your core, is globally activated to stabilize your pelvis and your low back. Go back to the plank video. We talked about that so many times. So when you're doing your squat, right, and this is again where the goblet squat comes in, if you hold it out here, you'll automatically feel your core, right? So this is where you don't want to be in your goblet squat, right? Like right here, you're gonna feel that pull this way, and your body will automatically pull you this way to keep you from falling down. So the other way that people will initiate the movement is not much better. They'll drop from the knees, right? So I can't go anywhere from here, butt wink or no, and it goes directly into my knees. I feel all this weight right into my patella, right? Whereas if I hinge back, right, see my shins stay mostly vertical, right? Can people's knees travel over their toes in the squat? Yeah, but you probably shouldn't allow yours to, unless you're wearing Olympic shoes, right, which is like the heel elevated. And it's not, in my mind, you gotta earn those, and that by earning them, you gotta be competitive. Otherwise, you gotta fix your shitty movement, motherfucker. So a hinge, just like what we learned with the deadlift, oh my God, it's all coming full circle. Hinge, right? Bending the hip, extending the hip. So you motherfuckers who talk about doing your squats for a nice ass, most of you are not inviting your ass to your squat party. What a bummer. Other things, why you should start, or why a front squat even feels easier for you. If you're like, man, I can front squat just fine, but put it on my back and I can't do it at all. Same issue. When you are loaded in the front, naturally, you will bias into a posterior tilt of your pelvis, right? And that's where you want to be when you're hinging, right? If the barbell's on your back, you will naturally bias into an anterior tilt. So if you already have like really tight upper back, you have no concept of how to keep this from happening, then you're shooting yourself in the foot as soon as you go with the back squat until you learn how to do it correctly. Don't go to the front squat every time your back hurts, wait till it stops hurting and then go back squat and keep doing this shit, because that's what I see all the time. Learn how to make this work for you and how to hinge better so that you don't fuck up your back and your knees. So the easiest way when you are doing a back squat to prevent it from, well, to turn it into a hinge, especially people with long limbs. This doesn't just mean tall people, by the way. It means tall people or even very small people with long, like femurs, for example. I usually have them do a box squat. This is a little higher than what I would want to use, and everyone has kind of a different idea of the box squat. For me, when I'm teaching this to people, I want it to be at depth. So depth is the crease of your hip under the top of your knee, right? Because most of us have that capability to get there, FYI, and if you do, you should save your knees. That's why, right? This shit, again. Anyway, so I have the box set back so it's at depth, right? So that people can learn where depth is. It also gives them the sense of security so that they know where depth is. And the best part, especially for the dive bombers, is that it makes them stay really tense as they reach back to try to find the box or the step or whatever. So I'm gonna be right here. The bench is just outside of my reach, or just within my reach, I should say. Boop. Right? And you see how my shins really stayed pretty much vertical there, right? And so that's a really good way, again, just to have people start to be able to anticipate where depth is, to get stronger in that position, and also to not be so freaked out. It's a lot easier when you're keeping tension, right? To try to reach your butt way back there when you know that there's something to touch. If it's too close to you, right, you're just gonna do the same shit. So I gave you a lot to work with here. We're talking about the upper back next week. Fix Your Shitty Movement Monday. My name's Karas. Have a good one.